Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome. I feel like I sound a bit weird. I was sick, so I feel like I still sound a bit weird, so that's the reason if I do. But anyway, today we're talking about a Thilbo fanfiction called The Herd of Durin. I feel like I say that word, Durin. Durin, I feel like I'm saying it wrong, and I don't know. I'm not saying it wrong, but I feel like I am. Now, this is an AU. They're all centaurs. Everyone is a centaur except the humans, right? So elves and like dwarves and hobbits don't. They're replaced with centaurs, and humans are just regular humans. So, but they are different. Um, each of them are different centaurs, though. So the hobbits are ponies, and they live in their own kind of little land, right? Which they barely ever leave, and so they're almost like a rarity because they never really leave. And then you have the elves, which live in the woods, so they're more deer. So, and then the dwarves, I don't know, they're just regular horses. I don't know, like just regular stallions, I guess. Either way, so what that's where what they are. And so they end up finding Bilbo because they're considered, they're considered not really even like thinking creatures or anything. Like they're considered less than by humans. And they travel back and forth. So the dwarves don't live in the mountain or anything. They travel back and forth because food is scarce, so they gotta go hunt some and find. But even then, because humans kind of encroach on, their land, they're getting bolder. It's not easy for them to do it. But they end up finding Bilbo, as in Thorin, and they end up finding him because they hear his distress and they're like, okay, what's even happening right now? And at this point, Bilbo, they find him, and he's been clearly taken against his will to be bred, and he clearly doesn't even want to be there, right? And so they end up releasing him, and that's when they find out they're looking at Bilbo because they're like, is he a stallion or a mare, right? Because they're like, he's definitely one of them because he gives off a certain like a scent. So he's like, but he, like obviously he's a pony, so he's smaller than all of them. Like he's smaller than both of them, right? But he's looking at it, it's like to either stallion or mare. And it turns out this is where like they find out like that you find out later that like where Bill was able to talk more because there's a language barrier, but he is a geldling, so he's both, and technically that exists in the Shire where there are plenty of them where they're considered both. So he's caught both, right? He's a mare and stallion, a mare stallion, if you will. So they end up taking him back to the herd, and they get him checked out to see, like, if he wasn't, like, if they got there in time to make sure he wasn't forced. They clean him up a bit. He's doing great, right? He's got his curly coat, and I mean, immediately Thorin's like, it's the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my entire life. So he's immediately like, yes. So um Thorin's sister, like, wary of him, obviously, until they do, like, ta-da, he's also a mare. So this kind of makes it a bit better, because mares are rare. They're, few, far in between. There's not a lot of them. And so to find Bilbo is like, oh my god. right? And so that makes her less wary of him though, because it's like, oh, he's a mare. He's both. Okay, sure. Because it's like, it's not immediately like, oh, it's another stallion. I guess. Well, is that technically? Well, sure. I guess it's just a boy pony, but still. They take him in and they immediately kind of like settle him down and get him used to things. Because even when Dwalin and Thorin were on their way back to the herd, they like obviously had to make some stops because he's hungry. He's got 7 stomachs, but like they didn't know that. But he was hungry, and they didn't really know what he ate because again he can't tell them, language barrier, and he was like didn't eat meat or anything. So it's like, what do you eat? Fruit. So he eats, which Dwalin finds weird. He's like, what, like leaf eaters? Ugh. So he's so like, ugh, okay. So they get him settled and they're like, oh yeah. He's also like accompanied by Philly and Killy. So they go with him with certain to go get like certain berries and fruits. And like they'll bring it back for him. And on one instance, they bring him back something that's clearly poisonous, but he can't, like, he doesn't understand how to communicate to them that it is poisonous. So he ends up like showing them by like pretending to eat it and then just dying. Like just falling over and dying dramatically. And they freak the fuck out because they're like, oh my god, what just happened? And he's showing them like, no, it's like, but he's showing them like it's poisonous. You can't eat this one. So, because they've never foraged before, because like, why would they? They all eat meat. They stick to the tradition. They don't, they're very traditional kind of tribe, or they're supposed to say tribe, which I mean, I guess, sure, but like they're traditional herd, right? All of them. And so they, they don't eat any of that. And the people, like, are in the kingdom of, I'm losing my mind, Dale, right? So Bard ends up coming out because, he hears about the whole and he has to settle it. He's king, whatever, right? He hears the whole thing. And obviously, as like compensation, because they're like, ooh, sorry, like, just kind of brush this off. He allows them, like, okay, we'll take, like, as consolation of like, okay, well, what do you want? And it's like, well, it's Bill's choice of what he wants. So Bilbo ends up saying, or really showing, right? He's like, oh, bah, because he can't say it. So he ends up saying that he wants the goat, right? It's like, okay, the goat. They end up getting all the goats because the person who had them just kind of wanted to get rid of all of them. So they end up with tons of goats. And obviously, none of them really understands is like, he can't, again, Bill doesn't eat meat, so it's like, why would he want this? Okay. And then Bilbo ends up showing them, because obviously at this point, they're teaching him to talk too, so he speaks kind of in like broken sentences, but as they're moving, the goats can like eat the grass as like they graze. They graze as they move along, and they're still not understanding until he shows them, and so he starts milking them, obviously, and they're like, "What the fuck is this? What's happening right now?" Right? And he starts drinking it, and he gives some to Gimli, and he's like, "Here, try some." And Gimli's like, "This is great. Like, it tastes kind of like meat." And it's like, so it's like it's a new like, this is where it's like Bilbo has said like, it's a new food source, right? And the extras that they, can't really take care of all of them. So the extra ones could be butchered and they could use their meat, but they use the milk. So because obviously food is always like that's kind of always an issue. They don't have plenty to go around, right? They have to ration it out. And now it's like, oh my god, he's kind of solved our food shortage problem. So he's immediately taken by him. By this point, Bilbo and Thorin are also like mated together too. But so they are like he's like even more in love with him now because he thought of a solution. He wanted for like the entire herd. Like he's already like looking out for the entire herd, and he's been here for like how many days, and he's already like, let me look after this herd like immediately. Soon it's time for them to pack up, continue the whole migration on their trail. And as they're moving along, or well, I guess they're stopped for a break at this point. But Fremen, oh my god, I hope I'm saying that right. Whatever. Their brother, Fremen. Nope. You know what I mean anyway. He comes back because he had left to go find a mare. Not that he did, but still, it's what he does. And which, he's like, oh, there was, I mean, he didn't really want to come back earlier because, I mean, he had to help. But, he's explaining, like, oh, he didn't find one. And he says it so nonchalantly, but this immediately knows why. Because it's like, it'd be hard to convince a mare to join a dying herd. Like, yeah, we don't have much to offer. Like, oh, yeah, that's real. Like, yeah, that's real appealing. So, like, even though he's a prince, but like a prince of a dying herd. So it's like, why would he, right? And, he's like, oh, that's real important. Like, oh, it's more important than, for mining for gold and like whatever they're doing, right? It's like, and Thorin's not going to do it because, well, he's too busy with the herd. Like, all he cares about. And, this is like, well, you should know that he actually did end up finding a mare, like a very attractive, like, fertile mare. And he's immediately, it's like him, like Thorin, like the same Thorin we're talking about. Like, there's no way. And obviously, she ends up going. I mean, she gets defensive too because she's like, of course, because like, why wouldn't they like him for who like Thorin is, and they end up going like over to Bilbo, and because he's watching over the goats, and it's like, oh, everything's fine, and he's like, I'll leave. This is new to him, so he's like, Fremen is asking like, what's with the goats? It's like our new food source, like our new food source and everything. It's like, okay. So then he's like, and then it's Bilbo's idea. It's like, who? He looks over and it's like, what is Bilbo? Because he's like shorter. It's like, oh, he's a pony out from west. So, and he immediately notices obviously he speaks in, broken sentences. And he's like, what's wrong with him? It's like, he didn't, like, he doesn't understand. Or, well, he does understand, but he can't talk. But he immediately just like, so why isn't he helping with like the like grunt work basically, and like doing like the heavy lifting and everything? And this is like Paul that even suggests that. It's like, what are you, because mares don't really do that type of work. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you even suggest something like that? And then she kind of knows something off with Bilbo. It's his scent. Something's real off about it, as in it's almost like it's not really there. It's like, you feel okay, Bilbo? And he's like looking at her questioning. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, of course he's fine. So then she immediately goes over to Thorin. She's like, okay, well, you need to, tell Thorin you're back anyway. So Fremen and her end up heading over. She meets like, something off with Bilbo. And he's instantly worried. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I just had guards there. What are we doing? It's like, no, like something's off with him. Like, did you notice anything? It's like, no. And that's when they notice like his scent is very off, as in it's not, because they established earlier that the scent Bill gives off is like the scent where the mares give off when they're like when they're fertile, like they're in heat, right? But Bill always gave off that scent, and they didn't know if it was like, supposed to be longer, or is this normal? And in that broken like sentence, he explains like, no, this is normal. He's always fertile. Anytime. Doesn't matter. He doesn't have a set year, like, oh, he's fertile this time. Like, no. He always is. So he always just smells like that. And so it's like, oh. So obviously now that he doesn't, it's because he's pregnant. How nice. And not the greatest time, because it's very clear, like, Bill, he's very, he hasn't eaten in, as much as he's supposed to, because he's got like 7 stomachs, and like, he's supposed to continuously almost kind of eat. And he obviously hasn't been doing that because of being captured and then them moving along and having to find fruit, which they've never done before. So they, so Bible's very malnourished. And so they have the talk. It's like, do you think it'll survive? It's like, no, it most likely won't survive. And that's kind of sad that Thorin immediately, his first thought is to immediately kind of mourn the child that he'll never get to see, because that child, like, that foal is not surviving, not in the state that Bill's in. Brendan is just confused about this entire thing. He's like, what are we talking about right now? And so, but he immediately kind of like moves on. He's like, oh, I heard you had a mare. And it's like, I do. It's like, okay, like, I'll introduce you. Goes back to Bill. It's like, this is Bill. And immediately he's like, what the fuck? What are we talking about? Like, that's stallion. It's like, no. Stallion, mare. Equipment for both really more acts like a mare than anything. So this is the person who he's made with, and like, proven. So it's not like, and Fenrir is, he's kind of like envious, because he's again he's spent, looking for mares. He's gone off each year to look for them, and to have someone kind of choose Thorin, I wouldn't even say like a choosing over. I mean, that would be how he sees it, but it's like, Bill never knew you, so like, what does it matter? Not the point. So even like Bill can kind of say, he's like, he doesn't like me. It's like, Thorin tries to reassure him, like, no, it'll be fine. And it wasn't. So what ends up happening is, it was just Billy and Killy. They found a snake, they were just poking at it, and they were just playing with it between themselves. They thought about pranking someone, but with kind of how tense everyone was in the herd, and how everything was going, they're like, it probably isn't a good idea. So they just kind of playing with it between themselves. Then Fenrir comes over and he's like, oh, well, why don't you? And it's like, that doesn't sound like a good idea. Fenrir is like, no, let's prank someone. It'll be fine. And they're like, okay. But they didn't know that he meant he was going to prank Bilbo. So they immediately were like, whoa, this isn't a good idea. Especially with, like, because again, Bill is like, and everyone seems to know other than Fenrir. And it's like, no, this doesn't seem like, that's not a good idea. And to prank him, Fenrir's like, no, it's fine. And so he does it anyway, throws a snake towards, it's not like venomous or anything, but it's still like, scare him. So throws it towards Bilbo. Billy and Haley immediately run off to go get Thor, and they're like, oh, we need to tell an adult. We need to tell someone. And so they were off to get them. And they're trying to tell him, but it's too late, because they immediately hear Bilbo scream, because the snake has, it's attached itself to his leg. And so he's freaking out, and he's like, they get him to calm down, they get the snake off him. Again, not really venomous or anything, but it did scare the hell out of him. And Bilbo ends up saying like how scared he was. And it's like, but he wasn't scared for him. Like, he explains how he wasn't scared for him. And so that's when they knew. Because in the beginning, they weren't really sure if Bilbo knew if he was pregnant. Because he gave no signs that he knew he was. Like, because he never acknowledged it or really said anything to anyone that he was. So they didn't really know if he knew. But now they obviously know. And he explains how his stomach hurts. It's like, oh, no. And so you need to get checked over. Yeah, doesn't make it through the night. The whole, yeah, they lose it. I mean, the most likely they were gonna lose it before, but to lose it kind of like in this way, it's like, oh, that's kind of sad. And so, Thorin chews out Fenrir, and it's like, he chews them out because it's like, what were you thinking? Like, why would you even go through with this stupid, like, just idiotic idea? And the fact that, like, he lost his foal because of this. It's like, if Fenrir, he truly does kind of feel guilty. He's like, oh, because, like, he didn't know and didn't really mean for any of that to happen. As they're moving, they end up crossing over into the Woodlanders territory. So, like, of course. And this is where we meet, like, because they're deer. This is where we meet Legolas. What's wrong with me? I can't say their names. Where we meet them, and they actually end up speaking Bilbo's language, and so he understands them. So they end up having like full conversations. And Thorin's like unhappy. He's like, "What? No, right?" So Legolas and like, oh my god, I'm gonna butcher it so hard. I don't know what it is. I can say it in my head when I read it, and then out loud, I immediately cannot say their names. Thranduil, Jesus Christ. But they immediately, because like he's a pony from like the West, and they've never really seen someone like Bilbo. So like immediately they're like, oh my god, look at him, adorable. So they immediately adore him, and they do end up supplying them with fruit, like with bountiful fruit that Bilbo needs, right? And obviously this is like, because they don't want to borrow from the Woodlanders forever, because like, being in debt to them, no way. But it's also like, they need a way to sustain themselves eventually, because but growing plants in general is not really their specialty. So that'll be a bit hard to figure that out, but they do need to, because Bilbo needs fruit, plenty of it to eat. But they end up for now supplying them with plenty of fruit to hold them over, and they send them on their way with and they left with a really, because only Bilbo, they have this like alliance going on. And this is where, with Philly, Killy, Dwalin, and who else is by his side? One more, I can't remember now. Bofer. No, it's Bofer. They're by his side. They're like his little guard. As they're going around and they're digging, right? Well, Bilbo starts to dig, and then like, because Philly and Killy won't let him do it, they'll do it for him. Like he just kind of points like a space, and they'll start digging. They're digging for like seasonings and different things for food, right? And so, because that's what not that Dwalin, because when he's watching over them, when he's asked by like Thorin, he's like, I don't know, digging for leaves. Like, what? It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like, what? You think anything I'm gonna do with it is weird? It's like, well, yeah, are nothing, like, leaves aren't really good for anything. They're not really good for anything other than feeding our food and stomping on. It's like, what is wrong with you? But he ends up digging for seasoning, and he's making stew. And so Philly and Kelly immediately excited by this, because like, it's something like human stew. And so they're like digging for food. And this is, they find out a bit more where Bilbo's people, like, they really do love food. And so like, oh, like a peaceful life, and like, oh, live like a peaceful life. And it's like, well, they love food. So it's almost like Bilbo is kind of like their food expert, almost like, just in a way of like, oh, make it this way, that way, like, because he comes from a land of plenty of food, and really having to grow them and take care of them. So he ends up making stew, and they're excited by this. And of course, like the herd, as like the tribe as a whole, are very traditional. So not all of them are open to the stew, but definitely a good amount of them were. And so that's kind of like a theme throughout the entire thing, where because they're very traditional, not a lot of them are very open to change. And then, Bilbo comes along and shows them a new way to do things. So it's not even like they're just kind of like surviving anymore. They're now living, really, like instead of just scraping by. So it was enough to get them, like enough to get people interested. So Bilbo slowly kind of like introduces new ways and new things for them. Like, okay, well, we have new things. Like, oh, we can trade with the humans, which they've done before, obviously, but something like to think of like, okay, well, what can we really trade? It's like, well, what do we have that, humans can't, because it depends on like where they are. It's like, oh, well, fish, because they don't have it right now. As Bilbo is, once again looking for more ingredients to put in the stew that he was gonna make, since it went over so well, especially since it saved them like a lot of food, so they were definitely like were stretching it out, and a lot of them were full, which they hadn't ever been full in a long time. They just ate to like that was it, like that's it, that's your ration. But came across like just staring at him, another stallion, and Darlin, like Billy Killy, all over him, like, what are we doing here? Who are you? His name is Dagon. And Dagon was basically looking for Herd. By this point, it's pretty late into the season. Like, you talking about you're looking for a herd. Like, we're. And it's like, well, resources. Like, he had a herd. Resources were, running low. So, he needed volunteers to dip, to leave. And Dagon, like, he's like, oh, I can handle myself. So, I volunteered to leave. And it's like, uh huh. So that's it then. So they end up taking him back. He's as they're like walking back to Thorin, like as they're like walking back, he's asking questions about like Bilbo because it's like never seen anyone like him before, and of course they're not going to answer. It was like, what are you so interested in Bilbo for? Like, don't worry about that. That's the leads, as in thorns. Like it's mate. Don't worry about it. And of course he, Fenrir had actually, he knows him because, he jumps around herd to herd looking for mares. So he ran into Dagon. So, like, he knows Dagon. Like, oh, so he vouches for him. It's like, we're friends. Like, no. It's, so he ends up fighting Thorin for it. It's like, we're friends. Like, I know him. He's pretty, like, I know him pretty well. Like, he's completely fine. Spoiler, he was not. So what ends up happening is Dagon, I don't even know why. I don't remember. No, I do know. He did this because he could, basically. I was like, what's the reason he did this? Because he could. What the fuck, Dagon? So, what ends up happening is he ends up causing chaos, right? Like, as in, like, he he ends up leading wolves, like, back. Because they were, like, out hunting for them to, like, look for the pack, right? Because they're too close. So he ends up leading them back, though, the wolves. Like, and they find this out because they're obviously looking for Bilbo. He's missing after all the chaos is done. But Dagon had ended up purposely leading the wolves back to the, like, where they were, to the camp. So they immediately broke through and, like, all chaos went through. And during that chaos, he basically kidnapped Bilbo. I mean, like, and Bilbo was, like, in the tent. Like, he was gone. He was asleep. And it's like, oh, we need to go. It's ready to, like, what? So he immediately is like, okay. And Bilbo was, like, he wasn't stupid either. Like, after a bit of walking, he noticed, like, oh no, we're going in a different direction. No, something's not right. But I was like, what could he do? At this point, he's pregnant again. And also, like, the size of that, like, it's not happening. What is he supposed to do? And, so the others immediately notice Bilbo's gone. And Dagon's also gone. So they're like, oh, immediately put it together and like, shit. So they immediately start looking for him. And with Dagon, as they're just kind of walking, like, he immediately, like, obviously knows, Bilbo knows, but it's also like, again, what can he do in this situation? So they just kind of, like, what is he supposed to do? He, like, even if he somehow got away, what is he supposed to really do? Like, he can't really defend himself, so if anything comes, like, he's kind of screwed. He doesn't even have anything on him either. As they continued walking, they end up like talking and almost like having a heart to heart, right? To the point where it's like, okay, so Dagon is very clearly attached to Bill at this point in a very obsessed way. So like, yeah, healthy, okay. Um, but they end up being attacked by orcs. He tells Bill to run. He does, as fast as, he physically could. He's pregnant. What's he supposed to do, right? Um, doesn't work out. Ends up collapsing. But he's fine because he ends up being found. Beowulf's found by Ori, Nori, and Dori. Ori in this one being a mare, so there's that. And so they end up fighting, and like first because they're wandering because, well, they're already with the herd, kind of, but they're not like, I don't know if they really want to stay, but they're out about for a bit. And so they end up finding, they left the other one because one of the stallions had tried to get to Ori, and in the most pompous way, and like obviously didn't like that. None of them, like Nori and Dory, didn't like that. So end up leaving. And of course they hear the orcs. And at first they're like, okay, we need to get out of here. But obviously it's a raid and like they're giving chase, so it has to be a mare. So Ori's like assistant, they have to help, and Dory's like, she's right, like we have to. So they end up finding Bilbo, very pregnant and very hurt, and it's like, oh, this is not looking great. So they end up taking him to the nearest herd so he can be seen. Meanwhile, Thorin, Dwalin, Fremen, like, they end up finding Dagon, and Dagon, he doesn't even care. He's running towards where Bilbo was, like, right, he's tracking him. And Thorin's like, I'm gonna cut your legs off. It's like, what are... And then, Fremen stops and it's like, no, he's the best, like, he's one of the best trackers, so, like, you have to let him lead, so, like, because they're not gonna find Bilbo otherwise. They do end up finding him, and surprise, it's to their but their brother tribe, sister tribe, whatever, right? So they're like related, basically. And so they end up finding them, and it's like, and that's where Bilbo is. And this is where, unfortunately, I learned, like, ooh, lost the other foal too. So now it's real sad. Because Bilbo would never cry for himself, but he would absolutely cry for loss of his child, a second one. And obviously this is where they have the sentence Dagon at this point. And Bilbo, during the whole time recovery, is with Ori. I was supposed to say Nori, not Ori. Ori. He's with Ori, and Ori is kind of considered weird because they like to, she likes to knit things, and she likes to wear her little knitted sweaters, and because it's a different material. And Bill was like, I love this, like, this is great. Like, of course he'd be able to new ideas, right? Because again, them as a tribe, like Durin Tribe, like in general, are they're very traditional, not very open to anything that's very new. So of course this would be looked at as like, it's kind of weird. Bilbo loves this because he already hates the scratchy leather, and like it's just like, ugh, he'd rather be naked. So he loves this, right? He loves knitting. He loves it. And that's where it's like, you should come with us, like back to our herd. It's like, really? And Ori, like, she's down. She's like, yeah, of course. I like, because, like, I love Bilbo. He's great. And it's like, so why wouldn't they, right? Meanwhile, Dagon's just also in there, like, in the same tent as them. He's, I'm supposed to say chained. He's tied up. He can't go anywhere. But it's like, yeah, it's clear that, like, even she can see, like, Dagon very clear as just, like, devotion to Bilbo. And so that's when Ori's like trying to convince Dory and Ori. It's like, no, I want to go with Bilbo. I want to go back to this herd. It's like, just like, she loves it, right? And so when the whole sentencing happens, right? Because Bilbo's like, I want to do it myself, right? And obviously, there are two sentencings. Obviously, you could kill him, which, sure, or enslave him, which is to them is worse than death, because it's like you're not even living for yourself anymore. It's like you might as well have given them death. And so that's what Bill does. Can't bear to kill him. And Dagon's all for it. He doesn't even care. He's like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, this is a twisted, like, obsession kind of devotion. He's like, yeah, sure, I don't care. I'll live for you. So, like, he's just Bill's slave. And he's down for it. He does not care. He's completely fine for it. All of them end up making it back, obviously. And Dagon clearly isn't the most well liked. I mean, why would he be, right? This is even mad too. It's like, why didn't you just execute him? Why is he still alive? What is this? And a lot. And obviously, like, Bilbo, like, because he couldn't do it. After the little bonding. Is that technically Stockholm? I don't really know. But they bonded. So, like, it could. I mean, even if, like, Bill wasn't really strong enough to really kill someone. So it's, like, not really great. But they end up, as they're like continue traveling, they end up being Bill ends up being pregnant again. Hooray. Because planned by Bilbo, because they've already lost 2 foals. And so now he's like, I need, like, but so it was a planned thing from him. But they end up being almost ambushed by humans. So they're like attacked, and they're like, they fend them off, of course, but this is like the humans, like they've pushed for, their treaty between the humans is already kind of like, it's already like shaky at best, especially with the humans that keep, they grow, but like they keep pushing their boundaries and they keep pushing. And so now this is where they decide, like, okay, we clearly need to stand, like, start fighting back, because they can't, like, if they continue to do nothing, they'll continue to think it's perfectly fine, they can do whatever they want, right? And so they do end up fighting back, and this happens twice, right? The first time they do it, they do fight it back, like, they end up winning, and it's great. Like, and the second time it happens is when they try and end up capturing, they're like almost like make a trade, like, for Bilbo, right? Even though Bilbo's like, he doesn't want to go, right? And that's part of the treaty. You cannot force a centaur to be a domestic, which and is like a centaur who willingly goes with humans and kind of just like submits to them and does whatever. But you can't force them. And if they want to leave, you have to let them leave. Of course, humans don't really give a shit. They're not going to do any of that. But so, and Bilbo doesn't obviously want to. Why would he? Who cares, right? But so another kind of wars are breaking out, and what happens? Set it all on fire. Just the entire village. Do it. They broke the treaty anyway, which they, so just set it all on fire. And I mean, they didn't burn down, like, well, they burned down everything, but they didn't kill any, like, the innocent, like, villagers or anything like that. So, like, they left them, right? And just like kind of like last time, they offered to any centaurs, the domestic ones, if they want to come or not. And a lot of the older ones, because they knew they probably wouldn't survive and like they couldn't adapt to the change, left to go with the humans, right? While some of the younger ones were open to that, and they, of course, they're still time for them to adapt, so they stayed. And the last one is where they got Villy. Villy is because one of the domestics was pregnant, and she knew she also didn't really have a chance to adapt, but her child did. And so Dis is the one to take in Villy and to really to take him in and like raise him. And she promises, like, he'll know about you, and everything, because it's kind of like a sad thing to see. She's giving her child a chance that she never got. It's like, that's kind of sad, because the chance of them meeting again, real slim. They'll probably never see each other again. And so with the second one, the second kind of little war that broke out, where they burned everything to the ground, they end up having another tag along. It's a human boy, and no one knows, like, he's an orphan, so like he lives on the street. So it's like, oh, so I guess we just gotta wait till we get to like the next town or village, because I mean, like, we burned this one to the ground. Like, what are we supposed to, So like, I guess we gotta kind of wait. And so this is where Bilbo ends up kind of taking him in. He takes a liking to him, so he ends up taking him in, and he's like, I love him. He's great, right? And of course, he's not really so, because he, like a lot of the humans, like really kind of had misconceptions about centaurs and like what they were like. And no, they take baths very frequently because they can't stand the smell of you because sensitive noses, and they're like, you stink. Oh my god, take a shower. So they're like, so he really does end up taking a liking to him. He's like, can we keep him? Like, please. He's like, I don't know. Especially since a lot of the centaurs are kind of like, wary around him. But like, he is like, he's human, but he is like a child, and it's like, what is he supposed to? He's not gonna kill you. Like, he's a child, so he does end up integrating himself. Like, he really does kind of become one of them, right? And throughout this entire journey, as they're making their way back to the mountain, right? Because now winter's over, summer, they realize we could technically stay, like, because they have enough food, they have enough everything, like, and with a lot of them like fishing and doing a lot of trade work, like they have enough to stay. They don't have to move. I mean, it's still caved in, a lot of work to be done, but they don't have to move. They can just stay in the mountain now. They don't have to leave anymore. And obviously, they end up going back through the woods again. So, of course, Legolas, Thranduil, everything. And they do end up telling them about, like, losing the two foals, but don't worry, pregnant with twins, which is apparently, because, like, that's a rare thing. Like, oh my god, you're pregnant with twins. So, rare, but excited. And then they end up going back, and then they end up finding the humans encroached on their territory while they're gone, which is like, what is this? And so, like, their flags are there in their land. So they end up burning all of it to the ground, all except one, as like proof to be like, and they're like, Bard has never done this before. What the shit is this? So they end up kind of holding themselves into their fortress. They're never gonna get past it. And this other dude comes and he's like, who is this guy? This isn't Bard. And he's like, you clearly encroached on her. Like, what is this? It's like, who is this? This isn't Bard. And it turns out Bard had been overthrown, right? And obviously this new guy had promised, like, oh, we'll take care of the centaurs. They're just filthy animals, and like, so of course, why would they care, right? So they're like, oh. But obviously they need someone on the inside. Like, none of them, they need someone on the inside to really see what's going on, to get to Bard and really to get him out, him and his kids, right? And obviously none of them could pass for that, except one person. And Bilbo's so against it. He's like, not my son, not my child, right? But he's like all for it. He's like, no, I got this. I'll do this. So he does end up going in and finding out the situation. Anyone who ever supports Bard is getting thrown into dungeon. They do not care. It is run so terribly. Basically running everything into the ground, right? One of Bard's daughters is like held, like they're all separated, right? The son, no one knows where he is. His two daughters, his youngest is held somewhere in some goddamn, like, someplace where no one knows. And the oldest, meanwhile, is held in the castle, being forced to, like, marry this dude. It's like, what is going on? And so this is where he meets with, unknowingly, but he kind of gets suspicious, like, this is definitely Bard's son. Like, he's one of he's just posing as like a street rat, right? With the other kids, but him and his little gang. And he meets two couple who are like, they run like a little kind of bakery, right? And they're willing to smuggle him in and kind of just get the guards off his back. But they do end up smuggling right, because they got to get the kids out first. So they do end up smuggling everyone out, right? The two girls, and they end up getting them out first, right? And of course, just like, before, where they do have misconceptions, like, do I have to sleep standing out like on hay? Like, ooh, like, I don't want to do any of that. And it's like, girl, please. And so, Actually, it's like he has taken to calling Bilbo his mom, which is like, of course. But at this point, they've ended up so this is where they living with them for a while, because where else were you gonna go? They do find out it's like nothing, just like him. It's like they're nothing like you kind of originally thought. And because they originally thought that because like, well, domestics were kind of just okay with this, like the bare minimum. Okay, well, that's not how we want to live, and it's like that's not what how they live either. They do eventually smuggle Bard out, along with like a few others too, like some of his people, and Bard is equally like, because like immediately upon returning, he's like, "Oh God, you stink. You smell awful. Take a bath." It's like, and even after that, they're like, "Take a bath," because like you don't shower every day. You stink. Take a shower. You smell. It's like, so they're big on cleanliness. We're like, okay, and this is where Bard is kind of faced with his kids. Kind of grew up a little bit without him, and like obviously they had to. Hello, they were a little separated a bit, right? And his daughter's like wearing braid now and everything. It's like, oh, because the pony, like the horses, the centaurs, like the braid their hair and everything. And they really love it. It's like, so like he's forced like to see them like they've grown up a little bit without you, and see that change is like kind of jarring for him. And he's like almost wants to be like in denial about it. They end up getting the kingdom back for Bard though, with help with from the Windlanders and their sister tribe. Right, got the message in time. Not that they really had to do much because they end up closing the gates and holding themselves inside, and they gave them like an option, like we're coming in either way, right? So give up the king if you really don't like, want anything. And so the people really did. They hunted him down, and they're like, here's his head. He's real dead, so don't kill us. So we Bard now on the throne again, and a now new like reestablished treaty, and them truly being seen as equals. They now focus on like themselves, and themselves being really getting things repaired and clearing out things and debris. And some of the stallions had left, like Bofer. He had left because like he wants to join this herd permanently, but he did leave his brother and like his family, so he's got to go get them and then come back. Not that it mattered because he's back in like 2 days, and it's like, oh my God, you're back already. It's like, yeah, they were already heading over, and then we just kind of turned around. So they're meeting them back again. It's like, and they're really to show it like how far they've come from the herd that like they stick to tradition. They really take into account. It's like, okay, well, what do you like? Your skills or what can you do? And they take into account. It's like, oh, we can use this for this or that, and then it's time for Bilbo's birth. Bilbo's giving birth. It's triplets instead of twins, right? 2 boys, 1 girl. So they end up, and that's where it ends, right? This is like a whole, 119 chapters. This is it's so good though, but it's so long, but it's so good. And they kind of, right? It kind of leaves off, not the ending, but they do kind of where they say, because where Bill was from, the Shirelings and everything, he's a Gelbling, right? So, and they're not treated the best. So that's why Bill left in the first place, because he wasn't, new opportunities and everything. But that's because that's all they've known, and they're kind of terrified to leave. That's just like, you get used to it, even though it's not great. So Bilbo, so they all got the thought like, but what if we go there? They really introduced like, ta-da, like Bilbo's not dead and he's living a great life, like And so I'm like, oh my God, that'd be like a great part of like a second like installment to this kind of series. But they have like other books going for them, so I'm like, oh my God, imagine, because obviously they couldn't do that moment because they have to work on themselves. Their herd is like not in the most stable position, but now it is, and I'm like, oh my God, that would be the second installment, is them going to the Shire and getting, because like Bill even said, like of course he wants to because he has nephews there and he wants a better life for them. So it's like it's already working out. It's already so it's already but no, but it's so good. I definitely recommend. It's 190 chapters, so it is long, but definitely recommend. Um anyway, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bye.